One thing every successful individual, leader, and entrepreneur have in common is a consistent morning routine. Having a simple, easy to implement routine enables you to start your day with a sense of purpose, accomplishment, clarity, and direction. For this reason, I have prepared for you a free guide with an easy to follow 5 minutes morning routine and a tracking template where you can document your progress day by day. I've been receiving messages from some of you already telling me how this habit has transformed your days for the better. Download this 5 minutes morning routine right now by clicking the link on my show notes so you can start your day on purpose. Welcome to the With Clarity and Purpose podcast with your host, Yanet Borrego. Each week, I bring you an inspiring person or message to empower you to live life on your terms so you can be who you want to be, do what you are meant to do, and have the life you deserve to have. We will provide you with practical and cutting-edge approaches to continue getting clarity and direction on your path, mastering your mindset, and gaining confidence to tap into your inner wisdom so you can live on purpose. Today's episode is gonna be very vulnerable. I'll be talking about the miscarriage I had at the end of July, which is last week. Right now is August 2nd when I'm recording this episode. And to be completely transparent with you, I was debating internally whether to share this or not. I was in a way fearful of being judged, or maybe thinking myself that it is a very personal thing to share. But when I started digging deeper into the why I wanted to share this, I realized that I needed to do this in a podcast episode, and I also shared it in a story on Instagram. And let me tell you my why. I want to make sure we normalize these conversations. Having a miscarriage, unfortunately, is something very common that many women experience. And the more we talk about it, the more comfortable and supportive we are towards each other. And maybe what helped me process this miscarriage may help you. And I think this is a topic of conversation to have for women who want to be mothers, women who maybe are pregnant, I think, and maybe women who don't want to be mothers and don't want to be pregnant. But it is interesting and also important to understand what we women struggle with, and even for males, right, as our partners. Cody was with me during the whole process, and everything just happened in a blur, to be honest, and I'll be recounting a little bit of that. But I just wanted to share this to normalize these type of conversations, to help other women that maybe they are ashamed or afraid about these kind of topics, or maybe they don't know that this is gonna happen to them. And hopefully when it happens, if it happens, hopefully not, but if it happens, they are gonna have this episode where I get to share what helped me. I get to share what I learned. And I think it's so important. The other reason why I'm sharing it is because I made a commitment in my life and in my career to do things out of love, not out of fear. So if I would have decided to not talk about this topic and not publish this podcast, honestly, it would have been out of fear, not out of love. So again, I'm doing it out of love for all of you, my listeners, because I think in the most vulnerable stories, that's where we get to learn the most. So I'm here showing up for all of you and also for myself, because it's important to lead with integrity in this beautiful path. So just to tell you a quick story, I'm not gonna go into details, of course, but I'll tell you some of it. Few weeks back, Cody and I realized that we were pregnant. It wasn't something that we were obsessively working on. It's something that, it happened, but of course we were ready in case it happened, right? And that's the pregnancy. So we realized a few weeks back that we were pregnant, and I mean, I was extremely happy. We were very happy. And I was 5 weeks and 2 days pregnant when I went to a gynecologist, and he told me, but then I told Cody. Cody didn't go to that appointment. But the next week, I just started to experiencing changes in my body. Of course, some bleeding, okay, and we are adults, so yes, you bleed in miscarriage and you bleed when you give birth. These are pretty common things. We bleed every month, right? So I hope you are comfortable in me sharing this. But yeah, I started experiencing some bleeding, and I knew something was wrong the next day when I woke up and I didn't have any of the physical symptoms of pregnancy, like soreness in my breast. That's a very common one. And of course, I was still bleeding and even more. So I was like, okay, something is going on here. So I called my gynecologist, and then we went and he made an ultrasound. Everything looked relatively okay. Like he didn't see any bleeding internally or any, like integrity when it comes to the sac, the gestational sac. But he didn't see a heart, which was interesting. But he said, honestly, I don't know, let's see next week. But he made clear that the bleeding, of course, was very irregular and it wasn't a good sign. So he was not he didn't tell me I had a miscarriage, but he did tell me that was possible. And what I was experiencing wasn't a good sign, right? And in my mind, I also remember I was in pain. Like I had cramps, like really, like really badly. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel uncomfortable at all. And in my mind, to be honest with you, I knew miscarriages were very common. Of course, you're never prepared for that when it happens. But thankfully, I had educated myself and I knew how common they are. I mean, 10 to 25%, if you Google it, everyone is going to give you a different percentage, but around 10 to 25% of women experience miscarriage. And thankfully, when I was in my corporate job, I had met a couple of women who experienced miscarriage. And even when I shared it in my Instagram stories, a lot of women, came forth and they are like, hey, I'm so sorry, I experienced the same. So many women, like, I want to make this clear, it is very common to have miscarriages. The first time I read about this was when I was reading the book from Michelle Obama, Becoming, and she was talking about many miscarriages she had. She ended up using IVF. And I thought to myself, wow, what a courageous and bold story to tell. And it is good to know because I didn't know this. And this was, I'm trying to remember when her book was released, but this was probably 2 years and a half ago. I think I was with Cody. So it wasn't long ago that I realized how common miscarriages were. So that helped me, like educating myself and just understanding, hey, this is a possibility. Of course, I wasn't thinking about it, but I knew this could be a possibility. And later that day, I came back from home from the gynecologist appointment. Cody was with me, and the pains were incredibly worse. And at that moment, that's when the miscarriage happens, okay? And of course, I called my gynecologist and I told him like what was going on. And the lady from the office was like, okay, go to emergency. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just crazy. I had canceled two coaching clients that I had that day, of course, because I had to prioritize my well-being. This was such a big reminder that it doesn't matter what's happening in your business, in your career, with commitments that you have, you gotta prioritize your health over and over, because at the end of the day, you are the foundation. And I remember just texting my clients, which were amazingly, of course, like they were understanding because they know me and this is not something I do at all, of course, with this exception. Um, that night I had my last master class, okay, my free master class. And I was so excited for it because I had a lot of people that signed up, and I was like, oh my God, this is a great opportunity. And of course, we ended up going to emergency. They did a couple of hours of studies and everything. And the masterclass time arrived and I was still in emergency. So I had to send an email and cancel it. I mean, this is the first time that I've done that, to be honest with you. But again, this was a reminder that I needed to prioritize my health and even also process this mentally and emotionally. And anyways, we were in the hospital, in the emergency room, like 4 hours, I swear. They did blood work, they did ultrasound of 2 different types. And after everything was done, they came back and they're like, hey, everything in your blood looks good. So you're good there. But of course, in the ultrasound, we didn't find anything, there is no baby anymore. And even though I was going through this process, I swear, I always had the hope that somehow the baby was going to be there, even though, of course, I knew the possibility of the opposite was also true. So in that moment, that was the first time where I realized, like, oh my God, there is no baby anymore. I'm not pregnant anymore. And of course, I cried, and I mean, Cody was there with me. We went to dinner, but as you can imagine, I wasn't on the mood. And it was such a humbling experience, right? I had many learnings, but to even know that your body is doing what it's supposed to do, even if it's an undesired outcome, to be honest with you, like miscarriage is. Knowing that it was common, it helped me. Knowing people that the same thing happened to them and being able to talk to them about their stories was incredibly helpful for my mental, emotional healing. When I knew I was pregnant, I also started reading this book that I heard, oh my God, I had heard about this book like 6 years ago from a podcast I used to listen all the time. The podcast is called To Be Magnetic, and it's about energy, manifestation. And the host, she's not the host anymore of the podcast, like someone in her team is. Lacey Phillips was the host. So the host was going through her pregnancy journey, and something that I appreciated about her was that she was sharing everything that was going on. And I remember thinking, wow, that's impressive, right? Because I feel sometimes we just suffer in silence due to like shame or guilt, or maybe it's my fault thinking, just thinking that way. And with her, I realized how important it is to be vulnerable and courageous to share these stories that may impact other people. And in her journey, oh my God, she was years trying to get pregnant. She did IVF, she did all these things, and finally she now has a baby. But in their journey, she talked about this book called Spirit Babies. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. And it's about communicating with the souls of the babies that you're meant to have. And since a child, I've loved like energy and, knowing about past lives. When I was 12 years old, I was reading a book about reincarnation. And I wasn't raised religious at all, but to me, that was more of a topic that was spiritual. Energy, this is the first law of thermodynamics, or the second, I'm trying to remember, one of the law of thermodynamics, based on scientific evidence, by the way. Energy cannot be destroyed nor created. It can only be transformed. That's why I believe in souls leaving the body and coming back, because everything is energy. And the energy, When someone dies, it is my belief, and of course, I respect everyone else's beliefs. But when someone dies, there is an energy to it, there is a soul, right? And what I believe, which again may be different from your beliefs, and I work with clients from different religions, and of course, I respect everyone's model of the world. I'm just sharing in this podcast episode my experience. What I believe is that the souls come back to get different learning so they kind of level even more on a spiritual sense, right? Because we are in this life to get the lessons, to get the learning, so we can move with more wisdom to our next life, right? And there is a moment that we up level so much that we get all the lessons and then we don't come back in physical form anymore. Anyways, that's my belief. It's personal to me. But I'm telling you this because this book is about these souls that decide to come back to earth as spirit babies, as babies, right? And he talks about these souls from the spirit babies. They choose the parents that they want to spend their earthly lives with, because those parents are going to give them the lessons that they need to learn in order to up level. And he talked about miscarriage in that book, and he like this, and you might be thinking how this guy knows all of this. So this guy is a clairvoyant, so he's a medium, and somehow he has the gift to communicate specifically with spirit babies, with the souls of those babies coming into the earth. The book is called Spirit Babies. I highly recommend it. If you want to be a mom, or even if you want to know about the topic, even if you don't believe in past lives, it doesn't matter. It's a really enlightening book. In part of the book, he talks about miscarriage, and he talks about the spirit babies, like the souls of the babies not wanting the mother to feel like it's their fault. Because if you educate yourself, miscarriage has nothing to do with you 99% of the time. It means that the baby was not forming properly. Like there was a chromosome or a genetic issue, and it wasn't meant to be formed, right? And what that book explains is that whenever that happens, which has nothing to do with the mother, honestly, that's why I didn't take it personally, because I was being so careful in everything. When that happens, the soul of the baby goes back, right, to the spirit baby's world and waits, because the soul is determined to come with you as his or her family, right? Souls don't have a genders, but when they come, they decide to come as a boy or as a girl, of course. But when they come, oh yes, when the soul leaves the body, which by the way, babies in the womb, they don't experience death as we do after we have fully come into this earthly world. I'm telling you what he's explaining, and I truly believe in this too. So when the soul leaves the body of the gestational sac, like literally the baby in your womb, which is really small, it goes back to the spirit world, and it awaits for the next vessel, the next body to start forming in your body, and it enters that body again, right? So I truly believe that the soul, and again, this is my belief, but I truly believe that the soul is there just waiting for the next moment, right? For the next moment of pregnancy. So this book truly helped me in gaining a greater understanding of what happens in the spiritual sense. This book really helps me to remain spiritually grounded, which as a consequence helped me to achieve mental and emotional clarity in those moments. Now, of course, that I cried, yes, I cried. And even on Sunday, we went to hot yoga, which hot yoga was one of the things that I was avoiding because overheating can be a concern in pregnancy. And coming back to the first thing I was avoiding because I knew I was pregnant. I remember that morning I cried and I'm like, oh my God, this means I'm not pregnant. The fact that I'm going to a hot yoga. So it's just interesting the meanings that your mind assigns to all of these things, right? And I did hot yoga and I just felt so much healing and so much completion energy, knowing that, I'm healing and I'm recovering. And physically, the day after the miscarriage, I felt so much better. I mean, I was really in a lot of pain last Wednesday, but I felt so much better, like mental, emotional, physically, and spiritually. And I was working with a new client. We were having a breakthrough session. And she's like, wow, I'm so impressed with your mental and emotional strength. And she said, I'm pretty sure it's because of your spiritual foundation. And that was the first time someone put it that way. But when I look at her comment, it is true. Like the fact that I had a greater understanding about energy and the soul's journey, and even that book that I'm mentioning, Spirit Babies, helped me immensely to make peace and accept what had happened. As I mentioned too, knowing what to prioritize, right? My business or my health. That was such a good reminder. Thankfully, of course, I prioritized my health and I canceled everything I had that day. And I felt good enough for the next day to continue working, which, as you know, I'm doing what I love with coaching, with teaching. So it also helped me heal a lot quicker, just being in a place where I get energized and excited for everything that I'm doing. That was super helpful. And also knowing people that had gone through this journey. If you don't know anyone, well, my friend, you know me, and I'm letting you know, like, you can reach out to me on Instagram or via email or anything if you're going through something similar and you need someone to talk to. That's the whole purpose of this episode, to normalize what a lot of people feel ashamed of and guilty about, to know that this is not you, like this miscarriage happens not because of our fault, right? As I mentioned, something wasn't forming well and the body knew what to do. We gotta trust our bodies and trust the soul's journey, as I call it. So I hope this was super helpful for all of you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I was really struggling. I'm like, should I share this? Should I know? Ooh, this feels so vulnerable. But I'm doing this out of love because I want to share more of these vulnerable experiences, because in social media, as you know, we always share the highlights. We always share the best thing. And in every person's, there are ups and downs. In every person's lives, right? There are ups and downs. There are things that they don't share. There are things that sometimes we feel ashamed of. And I'm here to remind you that we are all walking the same platform. We are all in the same journey. So thank you I share this in my social media, and a lot of you, a lot of my listeners, a lot of my clients, you were so kind, just reaching out and saying I'm sorry for your loss and giving me all the love and support. That helped tremendously too. And I really appreciate all of you for sharing this journey with me and for allowing me to share my story. So hopefully it can help more people. Again, if you need anything, I'm just one email away or one message away from social media. I hope this was informational and helpful in your journey. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening at With Clarity and Purpose. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Sharing is caring. Please share with your friends and family so we can continue building an empowered community together. I'll see you next week.